Greetings. Welcome to CRWS, Countering Racism, White Supremacy. We are with Evolutionists for Justice here with a Q&A. Hopefully, we'll be discussing and bringing to one's attention information that teaches one about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. And we already lost them. So I see you already have people in the chat. So I'm just gonna sorry for wasting your time, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream there. Actually no, we'll just I'm sure I can edit the title. We'll just hang out until he comes back. We'll
we could do an impromptu like
yeah,
we can just talk about racism and white supremacy. What's stopping us, honestly?
Yeah.
Let's just talk about how the code changed our lives. And actually, you know what?
Yeah, that's a great one. Actually,
you know what? I'd actually like to ask everybody else in the chat. Actually, if we could go once around the chat, and were you guys first exposed to Jane Elliott and Tim Wise, etc., before you were introduced to people like Dr. Welsing and Neely Fuller Jr.?
Well, for me, I still only know about Tim Wise through the cows. Jane Elliott, I've been seeing her like on the internet for years. I knew about her before everybody, and I always didn't. I just didn't get it. I didn't get her stance or why people liked her so much. Now I understand, because a part of me I always suspected something was incorrect about what they were doing, and after hearing her on the cows, I understand why. And I'm pretty sure Gus was very confused when he was speaking to her as well. And that was like earlier cow days.
Anybody else?
05, Ash, Ellen.
For me, yeah, I heard about Jane Elliott probably through some YouTube algorithm. I know some Facebook algorithm. I learned about Jane Elliott. Mute your mic if you're not talking, please. I'll just do it for you. Yeah, I didn't hear about counter racist logic until not till even after my mid-20s, way after my mid-20s, a couple of years after my mid-20s. Hip Hop Head says no, not him either.
Helen B.
No, I learned about Jane Elliott the same time that I was learning about racism and white supremacy when I found Neely Fuller. No, I hadn't heard of her before. The closest I can come to hearing something about anti-racism, the brown baby test or something like that. If you're a brown, like a paper bag, and somebody would hold up a white doll and a black doll, and
brown-eyed, blue-eyes experiment.
Yeah, but it wasn't called that. It was called something else. Something about a baby or whatever. But yeah, that's as close as I came to that, and I really didn't pay it any attention. But no, I didn't find out about Jane and Tim Wise and all of them until I started learning about racism and white supremacy.
Ash.
Yeah, I'm the same as Helen. I heard about the doll experiment. I think I saw a video about it in school or something. But I didn't know who specifically Jane Elliott was. And I didn't know who Tim Wise was until I heard his interview on the cows.
It's funny, I heard, I saw one of the interviews that Jane Elliott did on the Oprah Winfrey show when she did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment or exercise, as she called it, I think, on the Oprah Winfrey thing. I think she got her in twice for two shows. I think she'd probably been on there other times as well, but those are the two I remember. It's like when I was in my, I think, mid-20s, and I heard for years, that's the person that I'd heard speak about racism the most was this white woman called Jane Elliott, and I thought, wow, no, I'd never heard another person speak about racism in that way, the way that she was talking about it. And I must say, I just fell for it, just hook, line, and sinker. I was completely confused about her, and it was only when I discovered the cows when Gus was interviewing her, and I just thought, wow, the racism just came right to the surface. And she really had me confused for a long time. And I was one of those kind of people, I'd bought into the whole kind of white allies stuff and white privilege and blah blah blah. They really got me confused.
Tragic. Yeah, maybe we should all watch Don't Look Up. Take some
I have
notes and do a
I have a
discussion on
question.
it. Oh, go ahead.
This question for the group. So what are some of the reactions you've gotten from attempting to be codified in thought, speech, or action?
Laughter. One of them. Shunned is another one of them.
For me,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, go on. No, go ahead.
For me, I've seen a myriad of reactions, because I'll sometimes I'll just try to do it when I'm talking to some very confused people. For example, I was on set once, and this is when I'm just starting to read. I mean, I had already finished the ISIS papers, and I was watching videos on the code and learning about questions and not really responding with emotion and being more logical. And I had a old white male, one of the instructors. He happened to be on set, and I don't know why, but he comes up to me. He's like, I'm not gonna say my name, but he says, "You know what, sir? You know what happened to me the other day? I was in Brixton. Brixton is just code for black area. It's in some black place."
Of course.
And he talks about how gangbangers chased him with machetes. I was like, really, Mr. Instructor, you are chased by gang members with machetes? And he said, yeah, those fucking animals. And I was like, are you calling the human gang members animals? He's like, yeah, they fucking have machetes and they are chasing me. I was like, I don't believe you. This is on set in front of multiple people. And then he just kind of laughed it off. And then prior to that, it was time for lunch, and I'm walking down the street, and he's walking next to me, and then everyone's saying what they're gonna go eat, and then he's like, Trey, where are you gonna go eat some fried chicken? And I was like, in fact, I actually am. Yeah, what are you gonna go eat? Like, because like I'm just used to it by this time. This is like my second year at this institution. Lots of this gentleman has said multiple. So I'm able to get more racist data by being on code, or I'll have the reaction when people completely shut down. For example, I was talking. This person was talking to me about Egypt, and I was just asking him like the demographic of Egypt. Like, are there how many are the people there black? And he was like, no, not really. And I was like, well, don't you think that's kind of weird? what happened to all the black people in Egypt? He was like, well, Egypt does not belong to anyone. And I was like, I don't think that's correct. It belongs to somebody because it's ran and maintained a certain way. And apparently the way is to have black people either poor there or not there at all. And then he was like, well, some people are just lazy. And I was like, oh, there it goes. And this person was a non-white Egyptian, supposedly. Yeah. So I get either more data or what O5 said, people will shun, people will shun or laugh or just completely avoid, like just complete avoidance of me. And you notice the complete either depletion of friends or you never ever had friends. But being on code and well, not being on code, attempting to be on code and being classified as a black male, I now understand I never had friends and never ever will have so-called friends. And it makes sense. It makes sense why it's everything I attempt to do is very hard to complete, Uh, mm.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Actually, a lot of just depletion of a lot of associates of mine, and one of the things in terms of being on code, just staying in the question lane. I've definitely found down through the years that throws a lot of people off because they expect me to be very, very emotional. Like even like with subjects you're talking about, like Egypt or whatever the question is, actually, when you're not making so many statements and you're actually just asking questions, I find that a lot of people tend to get very, very frustrated when they have to just explain what they just said. That's one of the things I've definitely noticed about being on code in terms of trying your best to stay in the question lane and asking people to explain what they mean by what they say. That's what I found a lot of frustration, and people really just wanted to. A lot of white people and black and people who classified as black as well, just really wanting to argue and argue and argue. And when I don't want to give them an argument, then it's a lot of frustration. That's what I found anyway. Trying to be on code as best I can.
A lot of frustration, anger, hostility, yeah, a lot of confusion. Yeah. All the emotions, all of them, except happy and excitement. That's what I've experienced.
Yeah, a lot of don't bring that black stuff. Don't bring that black stuff around here. Stop talking about this stuff. It's always we
That's
don't want
not
to
the
talk.
problem.
Mm.
We're the problem. All you gotta do is pick yourself up and, stop being so lazy, stop. Yeah, it's all, take responsibility. Oh, that's the favorite word. Responsibility. Like, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Take responsibility, and yeah, it's literally just why do you and it's usually, I don't know if everyone else has found this as well. Usually they don't want to talk about that subject, or sometimes they don't want to talk about it. But then anything that happens that has anything to do with racism, and a lot of stuff or most stuff usually does have to do with that. And usually I'm the first person that they call. Talk
Here,
about
here. Here,
racism,
here.
right? Yeah, right. They don't want to talk about it before, but then as soon as something happens, all of a sudden, hey, what do you think about blah blah blah? What do you think about Kyle Rittenhouse? And what do you think about blah 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 blah? It's just yeah, really really interesting. But they won't purchase the code book though, and they won't learn anything more about what racism, white supremacy is. And I try and explain it to them like. Anything. If you're going to build a bike, you want to build a boat, you want to, I don't know, you want to do film, you want to do whatever it is you want to do, you probably are going to try and, get hold of some sort of instructional manual or something that will teach you or attempt to teach you some ways or how to go about doing what you want to achieve or understanding a little bit more about it. You know, even if you buy a mobile phone, it's got a manual with that. But when it comes to racism and white supremacy, all of a sudden they don't want to talk, they don't want to learn anything more about it. It's frustrating, very, very frustrating.
And that's where patience comes in on our part.
We have some very constructive chatter in the chat. Still Learning says, illumination to the people in the room, my way of saying hello. This is a question from Coco Jojo, who's always popping in here asking us questions, which I do appreciate. Although the code would allow a person to understand that the answer to these questions automatically. But Coco Jojo says, what part of the world is more racist, USA or UK? Now, everyone on code knows the answer to this question. And then we have, race. Still Learning is response saying racism is inequality. Racism and inequality is greater than zero, which should be the state. USA, or if racism exists, it shouldn't. And they have an exchange. Can you expound on VGQ from Oracle and Alchemy? Yeah, so for the folks in the chat, you're all always invited and welcome to join the meeting, the audio meeting that we are in. If you would like to do so, just say the word and I will plop a link in the chat. You all should be able to click on and come on in to discuss. Right now, we're just talking about racism, white supremacy, codification, and our experiences on attempting to become codified in our thought, speech, and action. So, if anyone want to answer the question for Coco Jogo really quickly, what part of the world is more racist, USA or UK?
Around the world, as far as I can understand, the white supremacists just have different ways, different methods of practicing the same thing, the system of racism, white supremacy. More racism or less racism, I'm not exactly sure what that means. So the person who answered the question would have to define what less racism and more racism looks like or feels like, or how that's practiced. I don't know if they're talking about refined racism, if it's more refined and less, less easy to see or less easy to feel. But I think subjugation on the basis of color is subjugation on the basis of color, no matter where you are, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in so-called America, if you're in so-called England or UK. I think it's racist man and racist woman practicing racism, white supremacy. You got different methods and ways they do it. It's in the place known as South Africa, where what a lot of people call the so-called apartheid system is just racism, white supremacy. Police violence in the UK or where we call America is just racism, white supremacy. If you're going to call what happened to the Tasmanians in that part of the world called Tasmania, every single man, woman, and child murdered systematically, it's just the same thing, racism, white supremacy. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but hopefully it did.
Yeah. I want to answer for someone who has lived in America most of their life and now living in a
existence. Black people don't have
existing,
lives.
actually not living. Existing on planet Earth, having been in America and England, I agree with smoking damages. It's just a different racist code wherever you go. There's no way to measure what's bigger or smaller. It's just racism, white supremacy. It still puts you in a powerless state and puts you in a state of confusion, and can easily lead to you being, in greater confinement, dead, or homeless. So I don't understand the need to even compare places and in terms of racial or racist aggression or racism, white supremacy. To me, the focus should be, how do you get rid of this thing that's everywhere? How do you? And I think by people talking about it consistently, every non-white person, it would be amazing if it was all non-white Black people who are just constantly talking honestly about what they experience every single day. Because every single day I experience racism, white supremacy, especially when I leave my place of dwelling, and that's from the psychological attacks and an engagement of psychological warfare, where people constantly projecting the criminal element on me by, hiding their bags, checking their pockets, crossing the street, stuff, just doing things that I see and notice, that regardless of my how many books I've read, and regardless of how much knowledge I have, it still alters my DNA, and it still pretty much places trauma and just negative things on my body and on my existence. So if every Black person was honest about, hey, I experience this every single day, can we talk about how we get rid of it? That's when we really start to solve problems. These imaginary measurements of what place is more racist, that's totally like nonsensical, if you ask me. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's so funny you said that, sir,
Yeah.
because even some people over here, some Black people over here, they'd say stuff like, I don't know, Cornwall is more racist than Brixton, or Stoke Newington is less racist than, I don't know, Camden, which is over here in the UK, where really we should be, like you said, just concentrating on how best do we go about eliminating the system of racism, white supremacy, no matter where you are. I think that would probably be a bit more constructive. But the question is an interesting one. It's one we hear. Well, it's certainly one that I hear quite frequently. I think a lot of us as non-white people are under the illusion that racism, white supremacy only exists in one part of the world, and it doesn't in other places. Or I don't know. Or Black people probably should not be geared towards eliminating that problem if you come from a different part of the world, which I always find really, really interesting. I mean, you either have a system of racism, white supremacy on this planet, or we don't. That's just how I look at the problem.
Greetings, still learning. Welcome to the panel. Pleasure to have you here with us.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Glad to be here.
Welcome. Is anyone else gonna answer the question, or can we make up? Not make up, but ask another question. What's going on?
Yeah,
I think we're all agreed, yeah? Are we all agreed that it's just different methods of practicing racism, white supremacy all over the world, yeah?
Oh yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I would just go straight to the. I'm just gonna go straight to code. USA doesn't exist. The UK doesn't exist. These are concepts used to in place of places. White people use these concepts known as places to decide how they're going to practice and maintain racism in different ways. So deciding but like focusing on which is better, like which is a better prison camp, which is a better room in a death camp is yeah, like what Serge said, nonsensical. So we so yeah, there like there's no such thing as California, no such thing as Hawaii, no such thing as Australia. If we're using counter racist logic, the whole globe is one place, and and that place is dominated by racism, white supremacy. Very, very hard to to follow this, not to follow this logic, but to practice this logic, because given how racist man and racist woman have designed planet Earth, it's very easy to sound like a mad person talking in this manner, saying that USA and UK doesn't exist and all of these things. So I have a question for the panel. How has attempting to become codified affected your relationship with your so-called families?
Um, I feel like I never really had a intimate or close relationship with my family to begin with, so I don't really know if it has affected that area very much. I know it's shifted my perception of my family members, um, and I kind of am more suspicious of how certain some of them spend their time and energy and the things that they um, circulate on the internet versus their engagements to my efforts in the fight against racism, white supremacy, or my engagement in attempting to practice counter racist logic on planet Earth.
Anyone else care to? Who's next?
It's definitely made me, I think, look at my attempted family in a different way since of Dr. Welsing and Neely Fuller Jr. and attempting to be a little more codified. It's affected the way I look at my so-called family, and yeah, it's definitely affected the way that they interact around me. Just because I guess probably because I began to question a lot more things, and a lot of times people don't like being asked questions. That's the one thing I've definitely discovered. People don't like being asked questions. Sometimes it makes some of us really uncomfortable, because if one in particular is going through life doing lots and lots of non-constructive things and are not challenged about that, it makes us so-called feel comfortable. But it's a false comfort, obviously. So then if you have someone around you that might question what you're doing, then you're probably going to have to come up with more inventive ways of lying to yourself if you want to continue that type of non-constructive activity. So that's where I find that it kind of makes a lot of people in my family feel really, really uncomfortable, because I think they suspect that I might ask them questions, and questions that they don't want to answer.
I've always been in a search of trying to improve the poor relationship between me and my victim unit. So right before learning about racism, I was coming up with little codes to try to improve things. Once I once I read the code, once I learned about racism, white supremacy, the relationships improved.
Wait 1 second, Helen. There's some distortion coming through from your mic.
What about now? Can you hear me now? Can I be
Much
heard?
better. Much better.
Okay, so once I started learning about racism, white supremacy, the relationship improved. You know how it improved? No contact, no conflict. So they might not be happy with our relationship, but I am. Things are much better now. There's no arguing, there's no fighting, there's no fussing. And I was always on this journey of trying to improve our speaking. um, I was always on this journey to try to improve our relationship, our tacky relationship. And yeah, so things have gotten much better because I stay away as far as physically. Like we do speak, and yeah, so things are better in that way. But yeah, I keep contact to a minimum. Oh, and to answer the first question, racism, white supremacy is global. And from the articles that I've read and podcasts and just listening to other people around the world, they are non-white people are experiencing the same mistreatment and um, killing and everything else that we're experiencing over here. So, for example, um, in the UK, they over there they call the projects councils. They don't call them projects or housing development. They call them councils. So I'm looking up, projects over there in the UK, and their non-white people are suffering with mold, with rat infestation, etc. I mean, whatever you think of, they got it. And I'm like, that's the same thing that's going on over here. So yeah, there's no difference. There in the UK and all over, but in the UK, I'm just talking about that right now. So they have also police brutality. There was a young lady having like some sort of issue or whatever, and the police ran up in the house, and they all of a sudden she accidentally falls off a balcony. They're supposed to be arresting her or calming her down, and she goes off a balcony. Never got any answers for that. So they experience so-called police brutality, for lack of a better term, at the moment, just like we do over here. People being killed and uh, cops putting their law enforcers putting their knee on our necks and just shooting us for no reason or just because of the color of our skin. So yeah, I hope that explains what I'm saying.
Certainly it does. Still learning. Would you like to chime in?
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate that. One of the what Helen B just talked about, what I would surmise is that racist man and racist woman, they run a business, and most businesses have charters, mission, vision, and value statements. And racist man and racist woman gets this information through structural racism. It's the language used to support their business operations. They translate that into institutional racism, which then teaches the content of the structural racism and the content of the mission, visions, and values. And we all know this is a global system. So like it was mentioned in the 60s, I think, I would modify this statement: racism anywhere is injustice everywhere. You can boil it down to that. That's just my DGQ on that. Like Smoke and Damage has said, regarding how the family interacts with the person, like myself, who has attempting to become more codified. Once I got into the study and got introduced to Gus T and Neely Fuller and Francis and Dr. Joy DeGruy and a whole host of others, Amos Wilson, I started getting into their observations. And it's just a matter of, can I apply this? Does it make sense? Is it logical? Does it fit? And if I found that it did, I tried it on. And once I tried it on, I couldn't unsee what I began to see. And then once I began to see it, I saw it everywhere. Then I started, sharing this with my care unit, my spouse and my children. And of course, the competition between the two within it is that it's what my observations are and how I view things versus what the mainstream media is promoting, and what is most comfortable. And I found that my care unit, my family, attempted family unit, they were battling between the comforts of what's being communicated as normal and the damages by what's being perpetuated as racism, and finding which one of these two foundations do I stand on. So then what I found that was happening is that a lot of them became hesitant to say certain things around me, because like Smoking Damage just said, I would then ask the question, well, can you define that? Well, what does that mean? Well, what do you see? Well, what did you hear? And a lot of them, they didn't want to, again, go into that level of examination, because it was beginning to cause cognitive dissonance in some cases. And that became uncomfortable for some. So this is my core family, people who live in the same house, or you're going to call it I'll call it the house. I forget the other words I'm supposed to be using in the codified sense, but those of us who stay right here inside this residence, they get a little bit hesitant sometimes to say certain things around me, just because they know I'm going to ask the question. Now it's to the point they don't even they'll just go, yeah, I know. I don't even have to say anything now, because although they may not respond to what I'm saying, I know that they've heard what I've said, and it's in there. And I have, again, a teenager and a young adult, excuse me, and I'm attempting to arm them with information so that when they enter out into the world, they don't go out there under the programming of what's considered to be successful. Because I think everyone in this room knows that under this system of racism and white supremacy, the only thing you can be successful at is supporting racism and white supremacy. You cannot be I take that back. It hasn't been shown yet that anyone has been successful at dismantling this system. So the system will only allow you to be successful at supporting the system. So it's my intent to arm them with information so that when they go out into the world, they can see with the third eye and be able to navigate accurately, using the right words, asking the right questions, not being afraid to challenge authority, and to determine for themselves who they are and where they're trying to go. So that's been my experience. And I've also learned that, I've observed that people, not so much in my immediate family, but even we start moving out into cousins and uncles and aunts, many of them use what I call 7-Eleven language of convenience. It's like when someone walks past and say, hey, how you doing? Well, I'm all right. See, to me, that's just 7-Eleven language. No depth, no meaning, no real intent. It's just convenient language to try to say that you said something. So a lot of time when I'm in discussions with people, I'm hearing this 7-Eleven language, which is now, again, Gus would call it, or I'm sure you all will use it to say it as well. They call them metaphors. And the metaphors are just things that are easy to say, but don't really convey the accuracy of what needs to be said in order to illuminate the true issue and or problem or solution. So my intent is to also, within my family unit, help remove the use of convenient language of convenience and to instill the choice of words through the expansion of vocabulary, to use the right words to convey the most accurate meaning, to identify the issue, and an intent to solve problems.
Very, very well said. Very well said.
Right on.
Yeah, very well said. And you know what? Still learning. Didn't we have a conversation on YouTube, I think, in the comment section at some point?
Yes, Smoking Damage, we did.
Yeah, we did. The
bullying of people in the chat
if
room,
anyone, everyone should go and check out that conversation. It's under, the 05, the one that you posted about. I think it was when the other white person called you a nigger in the virtual chat room. That's a really, really excellent. I recommend all victims go check out that conversation as well. That's really, really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think it's CR and VR too, right?
Yeah. We had a really interesting conversation underneath there. Yeah, very well said. Still.
Yeah. But I wanted to say also very well said.
Let me correct.
Yeah.
Make a correction. The person who said they didn't like niggers in that video, that was a non-white person. It wasn't a white person. Smoking Damages.
It was a non-white person. Oh, how did they didn't they identify themselves as like Hispanic or something, or Latino or something?
She said she was Puerto Rican and black or something.
Puerto Rican and black.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Really? Oh wow, that changes the whole perspective of, of everything. Okay, up until this point, I just thought they were classified as white. Okay, that's even more interesting. Some more anti-blackness.
Yeah. It's a very yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Still learning. That was a profound combination of words put together.
Agreed, for sure. I like the
Is there any,
I
is there
like
any more questions in the chat?
the term what Still Learning said. He said 7-Eleven language. I think that's
Yeah, 7-Eleven language. You think of 7-Eleven as being open
yeah.
24 hours. They're just a convenience store.
Yeah, I think that's
So
how
a lot of the language,
yeah.
a lot of language that we use is just out of convenience. It's not about accuracy, or it's not about illumination. It's just about getting into having an interaction and getting out of the interaction without the least amount of examination.
To me, it's like a state of complacency and disillusion, because they have to, at least on a subconscious level, understand that they're being mistreated a lot as throughout their existence. But I may have to pick that up.
7-Eleven language,
Right.
convenient
Brilliant.
language of convenience, but not of examination.
Yeah, I really appreciated listening to your articulation of how the system has affected you and those around you.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's what Neely Fuller Jr. talks about. Just a lot of non-white people, we like to use these compensatory terms, not in a counter-racist way, but just compensatory language. So we'll just say all different types of stuff like, the unconscious bias, et cetera, and all these other types of words that, because if we use these compensatory terms, I guess we're not willing to face the truth. Anything like Dr. was saying, anything other than face the colossus that's in the room, racism, white supremacy. So we'll just use lots and lots of different types of metaphors, lots of different types of just obfuscation, rather than just calling, we would just say apartheid, we'll say colonialism, people will say all different types of stuff, just rather than calling it racism, white supremacy.
If any of you are involved in any diversity, equity, and inclusion work, what Smoking Damage just said is the total embodiment of all of those efforts, and all of those efforts and all of the language, what I call the candy coding language and the softball language used in those DEI efforts, are all to protect the feelings of white people. Because non-white people are immersed in this stuff every single day. As soon as they get up, they know they have to go into battle. And they have to armor up, and they have to, some cases, suppress their feelings, emotions, thoughts, words, statements, in order to just be in the same space as the people who practice racism and supremacy. But these DEI efforts are all in an attempt to influence white people to allow more non-white people into their spaces. But they can't offend the white people, because the white people are the ones who have the power to allow the non-white people into those spaces. So even if they don't go after individual racism, they'll go after structural racism and institutional racism, where the words are kept. So the words are kept on paper. This is administration, rules, regulations, policies, procedures, laws, and legislation all contain the words that support the beliefs that come across as the behaviors of racism and white supremacy. So these DEI efforts are going after the words, but not necessarily after the behaviors. So that all of the words are being used to not incite any type of pushback from or withdrawal from the white people, because they realize that it's a request for white people to allow more non-white people into these spaces and to give them opportunities. But I suspect here's the fear. Opportunity leads to possible participation. Participation can lead to influence. Influence can lead to change. And this is what people who practice racism and white supremacy fear, is the change. So since they are the gatekeepers to the spaces of opportunity, they are the ones who need to be appeased. And if they suspect that this having more non-white people, right now it's fashionable. DEI stuff and equity stuff is fashionable for white people to say, hey, look, we've increased our numbers. We got 2 or 3 over here. We got some women over there. It's fashionable, but it's not enough to make a real impact, i.e. change to where the practice of racism and white supremacy will be halted or eliminated. And that's the fear, I suspect, of the people who run the business of racism and white supremacy, is that if you give more opportunities, more participation, more opportunities for influence, you're going to produce change. And then who's going to be burdened and who's going to benefit from that change? So I suspect.
I think that's a really good point, still learning. Oh, this is Ash. And something that I also wanted to add is, because I have had to deal with a lot of that stuff with diversity and inclusion, is that it makes a certain type of non-white person, it makes like a certain type of non-white person that just wants to succeed within white supremacy and wants white people to see them, right? That's like a big thing right now, is like we want to be seen. And so there's no emphasis on building your own or building something separate or like supporting things that are like made specifically by Black people or anything like that, or even just thinking of like, well, maybe I shouldn't go to this institution because no matter like, because it's founded off of white supremacy. It's this idea of just trying to blend into whiteness or blend into a white environment. So I think diversity and inclusion is really interesting because it's actually producing a type of non-white person that just wants to almost be white, white-minded.
Yep. And like what Still Learning was talking about in terms of the CRT education or so-called education and the, what do you call it, the diversity training and how trendy it is right now, is really telling. And the so-called sophisticated white supremacists are at the helm of that type of stuff, with the whole white privilege stuff. And I was just, as you were both talking, actually, I was just checking out what Neely Fuller Jr. was saying in the what you call it, in the word guide under liberal, and he just describes the same type of stuff. He says, one point underneath liberal where he says handling, lending and or granting money for curing specified physical and or social ills among non-white people while making certain that none of the money is used effectively against white supremacy. Also, moving among non-white people as teachers of subjects that are interesting but not effective in helping non-white people to eliminate racism, white supremacy. Providing and encouraging various forms of entertainment that have the effect of diverting the attention of non-white people away from serious matters such as economics, education, politics, etc. And this one as well, number 4, working closely with non-white people in a manner that he or she can watch and study them and control their thinking more directly and efficiently. And all this whole CRT, and so I'm in the middle of reading one of those ones that I can't remember who posted it in the WhatsApp chat group as well, but I'm in the middle of it was a PDF that someone recommended of one of these CRT training books, and if you read through it, it's just a lot of word salad, obfuscation, and stuff. And this is obviously stuff that they're trying to teach in universities, etc. And I think they're trying to introduce it into more schools, etc. like that. And it's very, very sinister. A lot of obfuscation. Yep, a lot of that. Just a lot of compensatory stuff, compensatory silly language, just designed to get us to stop talking about racism, white supremacy in an effective way.
The illusion of inclusion.
Correct.
For me to answer the question, attempting counter racism and just learning about the race problem has just allowed me to, like, what kind of basically what Serge said earlier. I never had a family, and this so-called family that I thought I had was nothing more than a pitiful, extremely pitiful group of victims who needs help, but is not getting the help that we need. And I've always been just my relationship with them has always been quite sabotaged due to the weight of the system and what the system does to so-called Black families. That I never really felt like I actually had this love for them, this caring for them, or much of that. Now there's really only one person in my victim unit whom I associate with. Everyone else, like my victim mother, it's like a forced association because she needs help, and I help her when I can. But as for feeling like we have some sort of bond, some sort of like, oh, that's my mother, she gave me this beautiful life. No, it's far from it. That's my silly victim mother who born me into a prison, then told me about it, and I learned about it not too late, but not soon enough as well. And I have other siblings. I know they're not in the business of counter racism, and when I do observe what they're doing, it's just being confused and being confused. Some of the things that they attempt to do is constructive. Some of it is not. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And teach what we don't know.
I second that motion.
Yeah, like when I was first getting into this business, I was very excited and to teaching my victim unit about the race problem. And tragically, only one of the members of my victim unit who also happens to be my twin brother decided that the business was worth venturing into. But yeah, I was teaching about delectable Negro, teaching about white people eating us. I thought I would do it. I thought that all Black people needed to know was that, hey, white people used to eat us, and that would be enough to get them. White people probably still eat us, but I thought that would be enough to get people on board and wanting to produce justice. But yeah, white supremacy is very powerful. It has trained the entire planet to not care about Black people. People classified as Black.
It's really sad, isn't it? I mean, I can't remember who it was. Someone on YouTube, it was saying, if racism, white supremacy was to end, what would you do, right? What would you do as non-white people, especially people classified as Black? And I think that's probably one of the fears that we were talking about earlier. Under this system of racism, white supremacy, we're so conditioned and forced to do a lot of non-constructive things, and we've come to enjoy those non-constructive things as well. So so if someone comes along that makes us in some sort of way have to face this thing called racism, a lot of the non-constructive things that we do might have to stop. And a lot of us are in fear of that. We don't even know what living a constructive life looks like. We've got no idea what that looks like because we're conditioned to do so many non-constructive things. We don't even know what, replacing this system with a system of justice. None of us knows what the hell that would look like. And a lot of us are in fear of that. And if you want to live your life, I don't know, wearing gold chains or whatever, or twerking or just acting stupid all day, and you're getting praised for that, when you know it's non-constructive, in the back of your mind, you know it's non-constructive, silly behavior. If someone then takes away that system of racism, white supremacy, or forces you to have to confront what it is and what you're doing, you don't want to have to do that. It's like someone waking you up when you're sleeping and you're still tired, and just leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep here. You don't want to get out of that kind of kind of way of existing. So yeah, I think that's probably the fear of a lot of us as non-white people, as victims. We really, in some sort of way, we don't actually even want that system to end. We just want a bit more of a I don't know, a more comfortable seat in the plantation or the prison, just a nicer cell.
Precisely, comfort. We want comfort, attention, and material nonsense. There's a question from the chat for you still learning. Jola Carter would like to know, can still learning give an example of how he emphasizes not using metaphors and euphemisms?
Sure. One of the things that I've been practicing doing is when I'm greeting people saying, "What's up?" And Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing illuminated the fact that most of us travel the planet and walk the earth going, "What's up?" because we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what this system is all about. We don't know how we're navigating here or there. So in an attempt to be more accurate, like I entered in the chat today, I said illumination to everyone, because illumination is improving the brightness of the space so that things can be seen, such as walking into a room and turning on a light. It's illuminated so that you can be seen, so you can navigate safely, so you don't hurt yourself. So when I say illumination, I'm looking to try to create the imagery in the mind of being able to see the environments around you so you can navigate safely and not hurt yourself. That's one example of being accurate with statements and not practicing metaphors, i.e. 7-Eleven language, just out of a matter of convenience because I don't want to think any deeper. A lot of our language we have been trained to use. That has to be the first understanding, is that most of our language we've been trained to use. And this training goes in to support the ideologies of the people who practice and sustain the business of racism and white supremacy, which goes back to a question that I posed in the chat earlier. What is the purpose of education? And the purpose of education is to train people to uphold the ideologies of the dominating or hosting society that is providing the education. No two ways about it. I don't care if you're in China, Korea, Hawaii, Alaska, Netherlands, Tegucigalpa. People are taught what the people in that area need to sustain the ideologies for that area. And when it comes to, let's just stick with the borders of the concept called America, within the concept called America, most people are educated to maintain the ideologies of the concept called America, which is predicated upon racism, white supremacy. And the language that we use goes into that support. And in order to dismantle this system, we have to examine the language that we use and get away from the language of convenience and use the language of accuracy, which means we must examine language, use etymology to break words down to get to their true meaning, and then have the courage to ask questions when someone uses something out of context. But we have to recognize when it's being used out of context, and to be able to have the courage to challenge someone to say, can you please define that, or what do you mean by that, or how do you apply that? I hope that, no, that's a long-winded answer, but I hope to answer the question. It's about being accurate, and that's an example. What's up is just a convenient way of saying hello, but it's not really accurate because, again, we're identifying the fact that we don't know what's going on. And I'm trying to get away from that. And I'm trying to help people, give them the visuals and the illumination so they can navigate through the darkness of this thing called racism, white supremacy, so they don't hurt themselves or anyone else in the process.
Ooh, that term, darkness.
Yeah.
Yep, I got you. Yeah, it's a matter of creating imagery. It's a matter of creating imagery. And I got it. Absence of information. Let's put it that way, to illuminate the absence of information. Because that's essentially what, when it comes to navigating this within this racism, white supremacy, many of us do not have the information needed to navigate accurately. So it's the absence of information. So we're trying to illuminate that dynamic and then improve the environment. I thank you
Yeah,
all very much for catching me on that. Thank you. I appreciate it. My responsibility.
Anytime I think of that type of thing, especially if we're talking about a so-called university system or a school system, I always think of it as, I don't really call it education. I usually just call it indoctrination or so-called education, because if that's the intent behind quote unquote teaching us what they're teaching, it's probably not education. It's probably more like indoctrination. And in terms of like the compensatory languages and stuff like that, I think and metaphors, I mean, we tend to see it all the time. A lot of non-white people say stuff like that. If you can clearly see that a person who's classified as white is engaging in, they're practicing racism, and the non-white person will say stuff like, this person is so stupid, or this person is really ignorant, or this person is really displaying stupidity, you know, they're displaying ignorant behavior. That to me is just obfuscation. Instead of just saying this white person is practicing racism, we want to just call it stupid or ignorant or any other different types of obfuscatory language, when really we really should just be calling it racism, white supremacy. And that, I think, if more of us decided to just call it exactly what it is, I suspect that's probably what they wouldn't like, racist man and racist woman, which is why they like to invent these things like unconscious bias and things like what is it, all these other types of stuff, white privilege, exactly, and stuff like that. So, you know, now we're on to talking about what white people receive, not what they do, in terms of what they do to practice and maintain this system. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge to watch for that type of obfuscation and metaphor using, because it just stops us being able to talk about this in an accurate way.
Question to the group. What does good parenting call it when a child questions the parent or quote unquote talks back? What do they call it?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. What does quote unquote good parenting call it when a child questions the parent or I'll just leave it at that, questions the parent, whatever, something the parent said. What does good parenting call that behavior
It sounds like
of the child?
Sounds like a trick question, but
No. There's no trick questions here, not at all.
When you said what does good parenting call it, do you mean, are you talking about people here?
Yes, the concept of good parenting. There are, of course, people who have offspring and they're attempting to raise their children. They call that parenting, right? In the concept of good parenting, there is expected behaviors and trainings that go along with what's called good parenting. My question to you all is based on your experience, and I know that there's only attempts to be good parenting, but now I'm speaking in that compensatory language and the expected behaviors. Good parenting teaches children that when the parent says XYZ, the child is to execute the instructions of XYZ without any question or without any feedback. Just do as I say or do as you're told. But when the child questions the parent, what does in the concept of good parenting, what is that behavior classified as? That's the question I'm asking.
I don't know. I didn't experience.
I'll be honest with you. I seriously, I don't understand I really don't understand the question.
Okay, I'm sorry that it's not clear. So let me just put it out there. So in the concept of good parenting, and good parenting says that you should teach your children to obey commands, fear authority, under the consequence of administrative or corporal punishment, i.e. getting a whooping, get put on punishment, you get your toys taken away from you. There's some consequence for disobedience and for disrespect. This
is that what good
parenting.
Is that what? Okay, are you saying that's good parenting, or are you saying that this is what white supremacists say is good parenting? Are you saying everyone thinks that this is good parenting?
I'm going to say that this is what white supremacists is saying is good parenting.
Okay,
And
so
this is
you're
what they
saying
teach.
under what? Okay, so you're saying under what white supremacists present as good parenting, what should a non-white person say to their siblings, or could you expound on that?
No. What I'm saying is that under the teachings or the expectations of good parenting, which means that the parents are the authority, they give the direction and they expect response to the direction, but they do not expect feedback or questioning of their authority. That's not the part of good parenting. Good parenting is command and control of the child. And the child is to take orders and to execute. That's it. There's very little, if any, room for question of the command or to refute the command. But the child is just to execute. This is what they call good parenting. So when children leave the home and they are quote unquote good citizens, or they're obedient, or they're not troublemakers, or they are considered to be well-adjusted people or normal, they're considered to be normal. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the statement was made, why don't people, if people would just use these techniques or the practice of being more accurate within their statements, and just instead of saying this person is silly, this person is crazy, this person is weird, and just say this person is practicing racism, I suspect that the reason why most people don't use those most accurate statements is because they have been trained not to question authority or to come across disrespectful to authority under the guise of good parenting. This is what good parenting produces: obedient citizens who do not question authority. And under the system of racism and white supremacy, racist man and racist woman are the authority. So most non-white people are trained not to question white people. So they don't use the direct statement, sir, ma'am, I think you are practicing racism, white supremacy, because they've been trained that that's disrespectful. So they won't do that. So they use euphemisms. That person's silly, that person's crazy, that person's not doing this right, instead of being more direct because of the fear of the consequences associated with being classified as disrespectful. That's what I was saying. Hope that was clear. And please let me know if it isn't.
Okay, I think I understand what you're talking about now. Non-white people sometimes obfuscate talking about racism, white supremacy in an accurate way for fear, basically because of fear of white people. Is that what you're talking about?
The consequences that white people can levy against them, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
or
yeah,
non-white
yeah.
people, or non-white people too.
Or
non-white people as well.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. And also, I'd say probably we obfuscate the language because we are afraid of admitting to ourselves that we are actually under a system of racism, white supremacy. It's like we don't want to admit to ourselves, so we'd use language, we'd obfuscatory language, like I said, we'd say stuff to other non-white people and to other white people as, oh, this person's really stupid or this person's ignorant, when we know it's racism that they're practicing, but we don't even want to admit to ourselves that we're in a system of racism, white supremacy. I mean, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm sure that most people in this chat now have come across many non-white people who you're having a conversation with about racism with, and they really don't want to admit that racism, white supremacy is real. And I mean, not even for fear of consequences of other white people, if there's no other white people around, if they're just talking to another non-white person, they just don't even want to admit that there is such a thing as racism, white supremacy. So I think it's probably that as well.
Suggestion.
Go ahead.
Suggestion, I'll be quick. Suggestion to all those who are listening to this recording, please look up and try to find out what each word means.
Helen,
yeah.
your mic, ma'am.
What about now? Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better.
Okay. Suggestion to all those listening to this recording, please look up and try to understand the words that are being used. Because what does good parent mean? What does disrespect mean? What, like, you have to break down everything. Or we've been trained to accept, uh, to just accept things without definition, without meaning, and that's one of the ways
Without
that we
critical
could.
thinking.
That's one of the ways that we could decode and unlearn a lot of the things that we are saying and doing. So yeah, so your question, I apologize, but I don't understand it because you're using terms that I don't understand. What is a good parent? What does that even mean?
I heard you say you don't understand the term, so I don't know if you were asking me to break it down or not. But I
No,
accept
I
the
don't
fact
think
that
you
you
can.
understand it.
I don't think you can.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
So I have a
And
question.
smoking damages, I think.
I think
Go
when
ahead.
you said good parenting, were you basically talking about white supremacists so-called good parenting?
As Mr. Fuller states that the white supremacists are the only ones who can be parents. So any training of what a parent is would only come from them. So yes,
So that's what you meant. Okay, I think that's probably what we were talking about. Like you probably could have just said that, then we probably would have understood the question.
Gotcha.
Metaphors. I mean, you're talking about 7-Eleven language, right? No metaphors. If you're gonna talk about it, just come out and say what you're talking about to avoid
Got it.
confusion.
I'll keep that in mind, man. Thanks. That's why I appreciate you, SD. Thanks, man.
Sour Kiss says a good parent is universal man and universal woman. Interesting. They will create a universal child. I dig it, but
that's completely correct. And yeah, and none of us know what good parenting is. None of us have ever experienced that.
yeah. So let me see what questions I have here. Yeah, I suggest we should this question has probably been asked earlier, but we have a new host with us, still learning. So I'll ask it again. How has codification helped us? Well, helped you, not us, you, because we United Independent. How has codification helped you?
Oh, was that a question to me?
Yeah, that was a question from in the chat to you.
No.
Okay.
It wasn't from the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just it was a question from my notes. I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but because we have a new host with us, still learning, I wanted to ask it again. It's for everyone. It's for everyone, but still learning. If you want to get us started, go ahead, please.
Sure. I think I made mention to it before. Is that the codification has helped me see things clearer, in a much more clear fashion. To hear language, to observe behaviors, to understand why dynamics are the way they are, why structures are structured the way they are. And then I can enter into these spaces and I use the word navigate, move through, interact with people from this understanding of the dynamics of how people are expected to interact and how they actually interact with each other. And then and again, I use the term, like I said, arms me or provides me with information so that I'm able to practice self-defense and self-respect when I'm in these spaces. And I have been in plenty of spaces where people who I suspect were practicing racism and white supremacy has used language and actions that I noticed for a fact towards me that at the time I didn't understand or was able to either comprehend or defend myself against. But what the code has done is not just the compensatory code by Mr. Fuller, it's a combination of the observations by Dr. Welsing, Dr. DeGrew, Amos Wilson, Umar Johnson, Gus T. Renegade, 0526, Smoking Damage, Helen B. Like my moniker says, I'm still learning. So I'm a sponge soaking up all of this continuously. And I making an attempt to practice, not just read about and get language together, but to practice these things as well. So when I'm this has happened recently, I'm in the meeting, and as I'm talking in the meeting, a lady who's classified as white, who I suspect is a practicing racist woman, as I'm talking, she just jumps right on top of my statement, right as I'm talking, as though I wasn't even talking to begin with. Now, there could be the observation that she can't control her emotions, or she has this somewhere in the back of her mind that she can just talk whenever she feels like wanting to talk, whenever I'm talking. So I made it a point to pull her to the side and made a statement to her from a perspective of professional decorum. When I'm speaking, I'd appreciate it if you would give me the opportunity to express my idea fully before questioning anything I'm saying. And in turn, I will return the same courtesy to you. If you cannot meet that, I understand. But this is what I'm requesting for this discussion to continue. And then she was able to control herself. And at the end of the conversation, she had those conversations. But without the code, without understanding the intent and the purpose of those who practice racism and white supremacy, without understanding that, the way I was programmed as a Black person / I'm gonna use this term here, the niggardly programming that I was giving, the niggardly programming that I was given, I just would have fell right back into space and let her continue to go ahead and talk over me. But practicing these codified responses, having the ability to understand these dynamics now puts me in a position where I'm able to see, hear, and detect, and then come back with a defense mechanism so that I am no longer harmed by these intents. And I think that's one of the ways that the code has helped me and continues to help me, once again, navigate with whatever amount of time I have left.
Do you suspect that the white female didn't know what she was doing, or do you think she was purposely, I don't know, trying to waste your time, etc.?
I think she was purposefully trying to exude her dominance. She's definitely also a time waster, but I definitely believe, I'm not going to say I believe, because I'm going to say I know that she was attempting to exude her dominance because I've witnessed her have this same type of response in other meetings with other non-white people. And it is something that I believe she, and it goes unchecked. No one else would check her. They will be in the room with her and no one else would check her on it. So that's like allowing her behavior, saying that it's okay to go ahead and do that. So then she's empowered. It was my intent to let her know that that's not going to work, at least not from my perspective anyway. But I do believe that she knew exactly what she was doing, because I think that's how she believes that she identifies as white. And I say that because she's attended a presentation that I conducted where the opening presentation was you had to identify yourself by your name, your racial character, and the job that you do. And she identified herself as white. So if I believe that people who identify themselves as white are required to practice the behaviors that go along with being white, just like people who identify themselves as Black, in most cases are required to practice the behaviors that go along with being Black or non-white or Asian or Hispanic or whatever else the case may be. And so I suspect that, I know because she identified herself as white, that she was practicing what she thought she should do in order to maintain the position that she has and to ensure that I maintain the social position and the social value position that I was in, is for her to communicate to me subvertly that this is where you are, this is where I am, and I'm going to do what I want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what I suspect.
When you say she was practicing behaviors of being white, do you mean she was practicing racism?
Yes. What other reason is there to identify as white or as black or anything else other than to support the ideologies of racism? That's my observation, my VGQ.
Thank you, still, honey. Smoking damages.
Thank you.
We'll be here tomorrow, 7 p.m. PST, 11 a.m. GMT. I think that's London time. Correct me if I'm wrong, smoking damages, for an interview.
What was that? Sorry.
Is it 11 a.m. GMT your time?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, so we'll be here tomorrow, so-called New Year's Day. So yeah, stop by if you want to spend your New Year's.
Yeah, stop by and ask me for some questions. I'll try my best to answer some questions.
Yeah, yes, sir. But from the chat, Sour Kiss says, "Qualification has made me less anxious. I plan things now before I interact with people. I understand and emphasize with non-white people and recognize racism." Yeah, same here. I definitely well, I would say I have pity. I feel sorry. I used to feel sorry before. I was like emotionally just super emotionally sabotaged by racist men and racist women in the system. I used to like feel sorry for just people who like just seemed like they needed help, you know, a person who was on the streets, or a person who was disfigured, or who had suffered from something like disfiguring accident. Yeah, I would just feel sorry for that, you know, pity. I guess it could be called. And then once the system just did its number on me, I didn't feel pity. I was instead of feeling anything. I was very apathetic. And now, you know, attempting to become codified, you know, the pity has returned, because I get to see just how genius white people who practice racism of a job they have done at just sabotaging us, making us do behaviors that can best be described as silly, stupid, and yeah, pitiful. You know, we are deserving and worthy of pity, and I see that every time I walk out my door. So I definitely it motivates me to want to solve the problem, you know, codification. And so I guess another question for the group can be, what helps you to stay codified or attempt to stay codified? I'll start off with this one. I listen to a lot of counter racist material, and I discovered when I veer off from that, I tend to spend my time and energy less doing things that are of constructive value. But when I have been listening to some counter racist material, I tend to have a much easier time of being constructive and doing things I should be doing. And sort of I think it explains how the system is so powerful, because everything that we see kind of is designed to be racist propaganda, designed to convince us or train us to use our thought, speech, and behavior to support white supremacy, where there are a few things such as attempted counter-racist materials that attempt to get folks to think, speak, and act against racism and white supremacy. So it makes sense. So that's how I attempt to stay codified.
You know, some of the ways I try to, apart from like practicing kung fu and stuff like that, that keeps me a bit codified actually. But apart from that, not showing off. I've suffered with that for a long time, wanting to show off to other Black people a lot of times, which is what Neely Fuller Jr. talks about all the time. To stop showing off to other Black people. That now, what did he say? I can't get the quote exact, where he says that non-white person is now suicidal. You've taken away that non-white person's ability to show off, especially to other Black people. And I noticed that about myself down through the years. So, I tried to stop trying to show off to other Black people about what I've learned from the white supremacists. Stop trying to show off about, trying to take my ego out of things that I'm doing, and just try and be on it, especially when I'm dealing with this subject. Just talk honestly about it, and not try to show off and stuff like that. I've always found, like, down through the years, I've always had that kind of tendency to try and show off. And when I realized that a lot about myself, really trying to not do that, that helps me a lot to stay on code.
For me, this is still learning. For me, staying codified is about producing justice, because I realized that the system of racism and white supremacy is about maintaining injustice, which should not be the case. Now, of course, what should be the case is that no one should be harmed, and those who need help the most should get the most constructive help. And those are the steps that I take towards every engagement that I have anyone, every single time I interact with anyone who's being harmed and who needs help, and let's see about them getting the help that they need. That becomes a matter of programmatic response, adjustments, or languages here and there, or just giving somebody some help wherever they can, wherever I'm coming across. And that doesn't mean I'm not project myself as some type of super person, universal person just yet, but this is what I use as my waypoint, is to produce justice. And one of those things, like Smoke and Damage just said, I too myself suffered from the showing off complex. But again, like I mentioned, I got my basic programming in a major city in the Midwest, which was completely considered to be the urban, and they called it the hood, the ghetto. So I got my basic programming there. So I was programmed once again to be niggardly. So one of those things is to show off. It's all about getting this and wearing that and having this, and that carried over into my young adult years as well. So I had to exercise that ideology and get it up out of my consciousness, so that I can actually see clearly and move purposefully without wasting any more time and energy. Again, once introduced to the tenets of the code, again, trying them on, see if they fit, and then logically asking, does this make sense? These things I found for me personally made sense. So I began to practice them, and they have helped me tremendously in getting rid of practicing the 10 stops, and eliminating some of the fears that I used to carry around with me, and all kinds of things. It's just it's a matter of unlearning the things that we've been programmed to do. Again, those expected behaviors, once you identify as a racial character or ethnic character, now you subscribe to practicing those behaviors, and you get taught culturally, you get taught from your family, you get taught from the schools, this is how you should behave. But all of that can be unlearned, because that's all scripted to support the systems of racism and white supremacy. So staying codified to me is a matter of producing justice. And and then I think people see that. People have told me, you're different. You just think different. You see things differently. And so this is without me having this kind of conversation with anybody. Like, I would go to work and people would ask me, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm still learning. And people would say, that's not a common response that we get from people. Why do you say that? Or if it's raining outside, people will say, oh, it's a gloomy, ugly day. I say, no, it's a beautiful day. If it wasn't for the rain, the trees and the grass and everything else couldn't do what they do. That's nature. It's supposed to rain. It's excellent. Are you 6 feet above? It's a good day then. Or I would tell people, I'm a product of the sun and the stars. I'm a product of the universal components. and they just like, man, why are you so different? You know, and without going into detail, just the thought process in itself, the language used, the way to see the world, the way to see my place in the world, how the parts of the universe interact, all come from a codified, centered position and approach to navigating the world. So for me, it's all about producing justice, stopping the harm, and helping those who need help the most.
Excellent segue into a little codified commercial. I'm gonna play right now. Give me 1 second, and then we'll continue the dialogue.
There are 4 types, 4 forms of it that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. You'll see it in the textbook, the forms that it takes. And that is Black people's biggest drawback when it comes from not only not having a code, but not really being focused on countering and eliminating racism as the reason for being. Whereas the white supremacists, their whole reason for being, for existing, is white supremacy. They have no other reason for even existing. This is why they're in such opposition to anybody changing it. Because if you take white supremacy away from a white person who believes in white supremacy, you've taken everything. You haven't just taken something. And it's the same way with Black people. You take away the ability for a Black person to show off to another Black person, that Black person is now suicidal.
So I would encourage everyone to go to producejustice.com, secure your copy of the code book, and attempt to practice code, spread code, and so we can solve this race problem.
Question to the chat, actually. When is the last time you found yourself trying to show off to another Black person?
I can answer that. I can answer that real quick. And it wasn't so much me, but it was within my care unit, my attempted care unit here. So a couple of years ago, for my birthday, my so-called wife went out and attempted to purchase a brand new vehicle as a gift for me for my birthday. And when I went outside, looked outside and saw this new truck sitting there, the big bow and the whole 9 and all of that, I said, sweetie, I appreciate that, but I don't need to show off to anyone. There's nothing wrong with the vehicle that I have. It's fine the way it is. I really do appreciate it, but I don't need or want that, because it's just a matter of just showing off, and I don't need or want it. Thank you very much, but go ahead and take this one back. And that was just about 2.5 years ago.
For me, I grew up very like not materialistic. I really didn't care about like how I looked all that much. I haven't bought a pair of shoes in like I think 3 years. I only have 1 pair of shoes right now. But I did do when I visited the area of the world known as Paris, I did buy some grills. For some canine grills, a silver pair, like a silver one and a gold one. And I'm pretty sure whenever I wore those grills to an event, a party, a gathering outside, I was attempting to show off, I'm pretty sure. And while pretending like that they were part of like my personality or style or swag or whatever. but I can't say I deliberately show off now. I I'm I have so many codified procedures.
Was he trying to show off
that.
those grills? Was he trying to show off those grills to the other people whilst he's having conversations with them and everything?
Yeah, I thought I was. I thought it was cool. The grills they have the anarchy sign like on them because I thought I was so-called smart, an intelligent Black person who knew about the world, but I was very, very confused at the time.
Oh, 05, what did you think? What did you expect the response to be from people who saw you when you were wearing your grills, either one of them, the silver or the gold? What did you expect the response to be?
With my Negro thinking, I didn't expect. I didn't expect. I wasn't thinking like what they were going to be saying. I just expected people to notice them and people to compliment them and make comments about them, and all of that was correct. Yeah. I definitely suspected them, expected them to think I was, a more unique kind of non-white person, or showing off, I suppose, showing off.
Yeah, the last time I did that, it was in the summertime. I had a Rage Against the Machine t-shirt on, and I was practicing kung fu in a park in the summertime, and and just showing off, right? Just showing off, doing my best moves in the summertime underneath this hut thing. And I noticed myself doing it as well. Like the more people, if people got a little closer, and I don't like people taking pictures of me, right? I don't like people taking pictures. So I usually do go places that are quite secluded to do that. But then when I really examined myself, I thought, come on now, you're just showing off. And the closer people would get, then I'd kind of, I'd make the moves a little more precise just to show. And then really, when I think about it, it's probably an act on my part of not wanting to face how powerless I am, or just how powerless we are as non-white people in a system of racism, white supremacy. So all this. I remember Neely Fuller Jr. on one of his on Produced Justice, when he says, a lot of Black males, we like to take off our t-shirts and stuff and expose our muscles and all that, and walk around and say like, look how tough we are, etc., 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 when we don't even own the place where we reside and stuff. So it was a pitiful display of show-offism on my part. It was really, really silly. The exercise was constructive, but the motivation being all like kind of show-offism, that was not constructive.
I think that's excellent smoking damages. I think it would be constructive for people to understand the psychology behind showing off. Like, why do people show off? And a lot of people don't really, they understand they want attention. And I think in some cases, a lot of people don't have any way of gaining attention from their internal compliment, what they have internally to themselves. So they have to get something external to draw someone's attention. Think back to the days of spinner rims, big gold chains. What else would they have? Some sunglasses that were, or a certain jacket or a certain hat, certain athletic shoes.
Oh yeah, I used to do all of that. Oh yeah.
I saw it too, man. I came up in it also.
I used to do the high top. I used to do the high tops, the hip hop dancing, blah blah blah. I used to go open mic sessions all the time and blah blah. The show offism, battle MC type stuff and all that. Just show offisms all day long.
Show offisms in competition with other non-white Black people. So now the show off becomes a competition, and competing for what? The attention of other non-white Black people, and for what? You're still not doing anything to solve the problem of your abuse. It's just becoming the fanciest looking person in the prison for that moment in time, garnering some form of, again, attention from a suspected skill set that you may have. Or in some cases, I know where I grew up, if you were able to afford a $300, $400, $500 coat, people equated that the cost of that coat with your ability to have wealth. You know, even though you may have just took some bottles back to the store for 7 years and got the returns from the bottles and saved up and bought you a coat, you still broke, but you got you a $400 coat, which makes you look like you're wealthy. So it's
Exactly.
the illusion, but it's showing off to try to create the illusion. And I think this goes back into something that Dr. Joy DeGroot talked about, is about the holdovers from the period of enslavement, where the people who were enslaved were given clothing from the quote unquote people who are practicing racism, classified as the slave owners. They would give the people they enslaved hand-me-down clothing. And when they got those hand-me-down clothing, those people who were enslaved, their chest got filled with a little bit more air, head went up a little higher, shoulders went back a little bit, and because they were showing off that they got these new clothing put to them, but they were hand-me-downs from the quote unquote the master. And the going forward with all of that, the programming still, I think to this day, is a matter of let me show off so that I can please the master.
Yep.
Hence the
Let's just show off
of
because
understanding why we show off.
We're insecure. That's where it comes. That's where it comes from. And it comes from a place of insecurity. Most of the time, when I see other people showing off, it's because they're insecure. Yeah, that's what it is. It's just insecurity, and our biggest insecurity, obviously, like how Dr. Welsing used to say, we know someone's running the world, but we don't know who it is, but we're sure well, we know it's not us. Right, it's people classified as white who are running this world. It's a system of racism, white supremacy, and because we don't know how to deal with that, we'll just show off to other slaves on the plantation. My chains are bigger than yours. Insecurity,
absolutely insecurity. With that, 100%.
Sir, you just listening? You showing off as well?
Oh no, I didn't want to answer this question. I don't know if I show off. Actually, I don't think I show off anymore. But I was definitely a show off growing up, and I also got a custom pair of grills from England that I used. I'm sorry, I got them from Paris that I used to show off. But I remember being one of those people that used to brag a lot. How I used to say, because I know I understand it as wanting to be known for anything other than being classified as a nigger, basically, on planet Earth. So I used to, as a growing up as a youth and a child, I used to brag constantly about being good at whatever it is I was good at. And at the time, I was really good at video games. So I used to brag about how many video games I beat, or how many video games I could beat people in, and really just using the things that I could do as a way to kind of boost my own ego and my own what I guess manifested in myself as some form of self-respect. But now I'm pretty much like 05. I never buy clothes. I only buy clothes when my old clothes rip. And I do buy the cheapest clothes that I can find. And I don't really care to wear name brand stuff, it's just whatever I find comfortable. I don't spend my money on anything unless it's food or technology. I don't have any flashy items anymore. I just have things that's necessary. So I used to show off for sure. Now not so much.
I should probably mention one of my biggest show-offisms, especially when I was younger a lot. It was just the ability to get women into bed. That was one of my biggest show-offisms. And, just getting females into bed, that was like a major show-off thing. everywhere. You know, it used to be a few of us. We used to just travel everywhere just to go and get females into bed. It was like a pastime. Just all around here, Hackney. We'd go down to Brixton, then we used to go down to Richmond, then we used to go down to Bob, just everywhere, just non-constructive, stupid activity, just tacky, silly show-offisms activity. That was one of my biggest show-offisms until I really learned about, if you're, what exactly was I doing that for? It's so non-constructive, and it's definitely non-constructive, because if it was, then you wouldn't need to keep doing it. It's definitely not effective. It's definitely not anything that's going to reward you or anything that you're doing correct. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to just continue to keep doing it all the time. Every single weekend, there's another woman and another one, and just completely just degrading women and stuff like that. That was definitely one of my major show-offisms. Dating and so-called dating. A lot of white women in there at the time as well. Terrible conditioning.
Same here. Oh man, that reminded me of back in college. Ooh, that's something I think I was trained to do as well. I remember just developing a reputation over at my old university. But I remember just feeling really good and bragging about just one of the days I spent just being really non-constructive and destructive, and even getting raped by a white woman that day. Anyways, I would brag about just this one particular day where I slept with 3 different females in one day, and when that happened, I felt really good, and then I would show off about it. I would brag about it, just like Black people are trained to do. But in hindsight, I was like, wow, super tacky, super trashy, because I only remember like 2 of the 3 females involved, and one of them was a white woman. So if you understand code, you know how that went. Yeah, super. Yeah, they really have done a number on us. But we do have some stuff in the chat that I want to catch up on. I don't know if it's Pepe, but there's he or she is saying, if you are on code, can you show off if you're solving problems? And then sorry, Kiss.
What's that question? Sorry, if you're on code, can you show off whilst you're solving problems?
Yeah. Can you show off you are solving problems? There's no question marks after you are solving problems.
It's almost like solving a problem is showing off.
Yeah. And then Sarah Kiss says, if you show off and you produce a constructive result, then codify it. Yeah, that makes, like, I guess, what could that look like? Maybe it could look like the Black.
If you show off and you solve a problem, maybe you should codify it. Is that the statement?
Say again.
If you show off and you solve a problem, you should codify it. Is that what the person said?
Yeah, if you show off and then produce a constructive result, then codify it. Yeah. And Joel Carter asked a really interesting question to me, but I think we all can answer this if we've attended so-called college. But he says, 0526, did any white person did any white person do non-constructive things in college? Can you, I think I know what you're trying to say, but just for ultimate clarity, can you type that in again, so and give it a proofread so we can I can ask it, Mr. Carter?
Are they saying, did any white person try to attempt you to get something, attempt to get you to do something that was non-constructive? Is that what they're asking?
I think that's the question, but I want to get clarity. I'm pretty sure that's the question though. But before Yola Carter comment, Pepe said, take your code to mainstream chats and see if you can tone down the white supremacist tone. I think that's a race code word right there. That's a word we shouldn't be using.
Definitely is.
But yeah, we attempt, some of us in our own time and energy, we attempt to, throw down some counter racist logic, counter racist language, but it doesn't turn out. It doesn't turn out well. It doesn't turn out good. This is a tough business, and we are highly disliked.
I think it quickly devolves into the 3 T's.
Yeah, we don't want to argue our debate. So Joe Carter said, yes, that is the question. Did non-white people get me to do non-constructive things in college? Yes, many non-constructive things. White females in particular. I remember one night, it was me, fellow, and another black male, highly confused black male, and this white female convinces us, while we're intoxicated of alcohol and poison or some sort of drug, could have been MDMA. I think it was that Molly water. That's what we called it. But it was like the middle of the night, and she convinces us to go on a hike with her in the middle of the night. And I'm walking next to this giant like cliff where any wrong step I could have fell to my death. And me and this black male are following behind this white woman. We were just stumbling and tripping and falling over ourselves, drunk, high. And then in hindsight, after everything, when I got some sense and sobered up, in hindsight, I was like, wow, we could have died, And we're going on a hike at like 3 a.m. in the morning with a white chick for what?
Wow, that is that's a dangerous situation. I mean, she could have just screamed rape as well. I mean,
Yep.
Wow.
I think I remember that night. If I suspect the night that you're mentioning.
Yeah. There's so many. I could go on, but just giving access to psychedelic drugs, giving access to how to concoct highs,
loop-de-loops.
Yeah,
just high on loop-de-loops, man.
Yeah, like making it seem like that having sex with white people is cool, and making me think that the whole LGBT thinking, the LGBTQ anti-sex is constructive and it's acceptable, making me think that is okay. Because when I got to the university that I went to, they're like, all right, it's a person with a male body, but they're like, all right, I'm a she, her. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll call you she, her. I didn't even question it. I just I guess this is what we're progressing to. I guess this is where we're going, not having the context of white supremacy in my mind computer at all. So yeah, many non-constructive things.
I think that many non-white people have been trained not to be critical thinkers. So for you to go to the university and someone says, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, hey, just roll along with it because you want to fit in, don't want to, trying to find your way. If that's what's going on in this place and space, again, without the ability of critical thinking, most people just go along with, quote unquote, go with the flow or get with the program. Get with the program.
A thinking slave is a dangerous slave.
As communicated in the media production roots.
Precisely. Yeah, but white women in particular have brought me to spaces where I'm witnessing people do math, and I'm being invited to do math and cocaine. Um, Thankfully, I was never confused to the degree where I actually tried math or anything like that. But definitely, hanging out with maybe white Hispanics, maybe non-white Hispanics. I don't know. Didn't ask. But yeah, white women are very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. And this person is now like getting their uh, MD in health, and this person, once, who drove around Oakland to pick up cocaine, with a white woman. So it's just, yeah, white people are very powerful, very dangerous, especially if you're confused. What would have happened if we would have got stopped by some race soldiers? I would have been one greatly confined Negro.
Oh yeah, all the what can we call it? Stop product. All of those, they would have just said it's all yours. It's all 05s. It's nothing to do with us. He made us get all that stuff and blah blah. And you'd have been the person definitely in a greater confinement. I suspect. Yeah, when I was in college and stuff like that, it was most of the non-constructive stuff definitely came from the direction of the white females. Tried to get me to stop doing anything constructive stuff. You just don't need to go to that lecture. Oh, you don't need to go to that. Oh, just come hang out with us. Just do this and just do that. And if we look at the white supremacist media, you would just think drugs equals black people, but actually I only saw drugs when I started hanging around with some white people. That's when I saw drugs. I mean, up until that time, I just saw a couple of non-white people might have been smoking weed or something like that. We got nothing. We got nothing on the white supremacists when it comes to that type of non-constructive behavior. I thought I've seen it all. You hang around with some white people, then you'll see drink, then you'll see drugs, then you see all manner of different types of debauchery. Wow.
Oh yeah, at Berkeley, there's these things called co-ops, and a lot of the white students live in it. And like there's many co-ops. I can only recall one of the white ones right now, and all of them are white, but one of the main white ones was called Oscar Wilde. It was known for where the anti-sexuals were, and they would party a lot. And there's another one where they're also named for partying a lot. But yeah, so these white so-called Berkeley students would just be there doing cocaine, doing ketamine, doing all sorts of stuff, just partying until like endless hours of the night, and doing all sorts of debauchery. They would have these certain game nights for the housemates, where they would play all these games that could have easily led to sex, or doing a line of something, or taking some ecstasy or some psychedelic. But yeah, this is all done. This is all like, the culture of higher education. I suspect white people love partying, love doing drugs, and the school of Berkeley I went to, some like 1% or less black people. So yeah, this is mostly what white people are doing. Super experimenting with black people, having their fun there. Raping us over there. I there's been encounters where I've met a white woman, and then less than an hour I'm being raped by her. Yeah, it's really, really terroristic. what goes down at the university.
It's just so it's terrible. I mean, Gus asks this
Bro,
question
what's
all the
going
time.
on, man? You go to Gus.
Gus also asks this question all the time. What does it mean to be white in a system of racism, white supremacy, right? And especially when it comes to things like that, like just carrying what they call drugs on them and stuff like that, and things like that.
Yeah, what's
No,
up?
no, no. Just in general, I was just saying, like, what does it mean to be white? I mean, I've been on the road to some sort of party or something with people classified as white, and I know. I mean, I don't do any kind of like stuff like that, like drugs and things like that, but they all do, and I know for a fact that they had this, that, and the other different types of drugs on them, LSD, all different types of MDMA, etc. And on the way to the party, we see non-white people getting pulled over by the police all the time, stopped and searched, blah, blah, blah. And these white people are just walking around with impunity. They've got so much power, not privilege. They've got so much power to do as they please, just to walk around unmolested, doing all different types of stuff. I mean, I remember I was talking to this white girl, white female, years ago, and she was saying the place that she lives, that she was living with two non-white males, right, friends of hers, and she was saying that they haven't paid for shopping in about a year. They haven't purchased any groceries for a year. All they do is go into a supermarket and they just fill up their bags with stuff and just walk out. That's all they do, because they know they have the power to walk around in the system and unmolested. Because if you're white, you're not a criminal. You're not looked upon as a criminal. You're not suspected of being one, etc. You're just, you must have some sort of mental problem if you do something that's incorrect, if you're a white person. So they're just getting away with stuff every single day. What does it mean to be white in a system of racism, white supremacy?
Precisely. All right, we just hit the 2-hour mark. We'll be here tomorrow. Should be 7 p.m. PST, 11 a.m. GMT for the folks who are out there in England, UK, whatnot. So, what are, I guess we could get into some closing questions. Just what are some folks? I think it's so limited, but what are some counter-racist materials folks are listening to? Like, what are some folks' favorite podcasts or YouTube channels or radio broadcasts, stuff like that?
Gus T is doing a really interesting book study on Lucky by Alice Sebold. She's the suspected white supremacist who wrote The Lovely Bones, and it was obviously made into that film. Yeah, that's all I'll say. I'll leave it at that. I'll just say, if non-white people should really, really check out the Gus T Renegade on the cows, context of white supremacy. He's doing a book study on that, and definitely check on this channel. We got the race code war study. I'm sure that's going to be starting again, right? 05.
Yes, sir. This Sunday.
Yeah. So so Gus T on the cows. This one. Oh, and if you feel so inclined, come visit my channel on Reviews Room on Instagram. Yeah, I try and put some constructive material on there when I have time and energy to do so. Yeah, and obviously visit producejustice.com and check out Neely Fuller Jr. He does a weekly broadcast on there as well. Understand I'm confident that if you check out these things, the cows, and if you check out that's context of white supremacy, Black Talk Radio. If you check out Neely Fuller Jr.'s on Neely Fuller Jr. on producejustice.com, I'm confident that you probably will gain a better understanding of what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works.
Well said. And yeah, I agree with everything you said. That's my list as well. The cows definitely a very constructive piece of attempted counter racist materials. I think an effective number of non-white people just gave that show that program a listen, a couple of listens, we could really get some codification and mass going. I suspect. Oh, got Edward Williams in the house. Well, in the digital space. Greetings, Edward Williams. Yeah, for me, I would also say, yeah, please check out the playlist we have on our channel. Some of it, it is all designed to be of constructive value, and some of it may be, some of it may not be, but that is up to you to give it a gander. I would also say, hey, go to counterracism.com, go to the radio tab, and there's always content playing there at counterracism.com. And if you want to go even further into the counter-racism science and look at some studies, do some experiments, all that information is there.
I'm with you guys that this everything you all just mentioned. I'm follow all of those as well. Gus produced Justice, the Race Code Wars. I'm also a fan of Amos Wilson's. I suppose some people upload presentations by Amos Wilson. I check out those as well. I'm also a fan of First Amendment auditing. I don't know if you all have gotten into any, get into that or anything like that, but I'm a fan of that as well. And I find it interesting because it's people who use the language of quote unquote the Constitution and the rules and regulations that go along with that when encountering especially authorities or law enforcement officers. And again, this is a matter of people practicing and taking that language and putting it into practice to exercise their rights, which is considered to be abnormal in the normal world. Practicing your rights, exercising your rights is considered to be abnormal or suspicious. So I find that interesting, and you roll that into the context of racism, white supremacy, how again a non-white person questioning a white person would be considered suspicious or abnormal. It's in the same kind of realm. I also thought look at a guy named Anthony Magnabusco. He practices a form of what's called street epistemology, and asking people, how do they know what they know? How do they know what they know? How do they come to the conclusions for what they know, or do they just believe? And is their belief system tied to anything that can be proven, or do they just believe it because of the fear of not believing? Which again, rolling that into the context of racism, white supremacy, why do people practice racism, white supremacy, and why do people believe that this is a system that should be in place? Or why do non-white people believe that this system doesn't exist? Again, questioning, how do they know what they know? So just a couple of that. If you all are interested, you can go check those out as well. If they fit, they fit. If they don't, okay, you can abandon them and go on about your day too. As much.
Wow, definitely gotta check out some of those. Alrighty, I think
I would like to say this. Before you pull the plug on everything, I would like to say this. When I started listening to Gus, I can't tell you how much that young man's presentations changed how I interact with the rest of the world. The way he commands his interviews, his conversations, he controls his emotions, he uses logic and accuracy. That's so I patterned a lot of my discussions with people after the way Gus does what he does on his show. I just found it to be absolutely magnificent. His command of of everything that he does, from the seat that he occupies in the interaction that he engages in. Just absolutely. So if there's anyone in the chat or anyone else that's listening that you are not familiar with Gus T. Renegade and the Cows, please, I highly encourage you to check out something Gus has. There's plenty of presentations online on YouTube from Gus T. Renegade and the Cows, Context of White Supremacy, C.O.W.S. Go look that up and you can find lots and lots of, and please just listen to how this young man takes the code and uses it in conversation to illuminate and you can get white people to state, yes, I am a racist. It's accurate, it's powerful. It's the best way I can put it, it's powerful. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's a definitely stellar example of what codification can look like, for sure. And also, folks, you guys can just Google cows C.O.W.S. Just Google that. Podbean. There's like over thousands of broadcasts you can find. You can also do Google the same thing, cows, the acronyms and the archive. Type that all in, and their archive should pop up where you can see some of their older broadcasts. Gus's older broadcasts where they used to have a 10-year-old. He used to have a 10-year-old child there, and that's telling, because if a 10-year-old can understand codification and the importance of producing justice, and there's really no excuses for any non-white people, especially those of us classified as Black. But yeah, that the Cows, Context of White Supremacy, 100% recommended. Should be on every Black person's like listening list, for sure. There we have folks, please, this account, this YouTube channel, CRWS, is very nigger banned, more commonly known as shadow banned, meaning that it does not pop up in the algorithm as much, and it's very hard for people to find the channel. So please, if you felt it was of constructive value, please comment, like, and share it on your social media if you have any of that stuff. That will be very helpful in getting this information to more non-white people, so we can gather, so we can just develop that effective number of non-white people who will produce a system of justice, because we shouldn't have to live in such a incorrect existence due to racism and white supremacy. We will be here tomorrow, so-called New Year's, to have a chat with Smoky Damages, to hear about racism and white supremacy from the experiences of a Black male who grew up in the area of the world known as the United Kingdom. So that should be pleasant, instead of going out and trying to find someone to kiss on New Year's. Maybe stop by. Give it a
yeah, hopefully it's a lot more constructive than that. I can't promise, but hopefully it will be. I'll be here 11 a.m. tomorrow morning GMT time. So you could probably work out what it is around the globe, but it's 11 a.m. GMT. 7
p.m. PST. Yeah, what I just said reminds me. I spent a New Year's trying to kiss a white chick on New Year's.
Yep, me too. Very, very tacky. Very, 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 very tacky. Well, we've all got so many war stories. It's and it's an ongoing war. The tragic thing as well, it's an ongoing war. So unfortunately, there's probably going to be more war stories to report. Unfortunately,
there'll be a lot of 3T behavior tonight, man. A lot of 3T behavior tonight.
Yes, exactly. Tacky, trashy, and terroristic. Okay, we have
Oh, five.
yeah.
Any more questions from the chat?
Let me see. Yeah, and and this was not planned. We were supposed to be here with Evolutionists for Justice, but we had technical difficulties, and then this was an impromptu plan B, I should say. But yeah, actually, there's more question. This is from Sour Kiss. Have a good one, Edward Williams. Sour Kiss says, I think he refined his code, so it may sound confrontational. Again, if you don't find it constructive, then don't tune in. Do you listen to Neely Fuller Jr.? I think Sour Kiss is talking to Pepe. I don't know if that was directly at us, but yeah. Produce Justice. That is also. I think that show has helped me to just really not get nervous when talking to anybody. Period. Because when I first got into counter racism, I picked up the code, and I began to hear Neely Fuller Jr.'s voice. I was a little bit intimidated by it all, and calling into a show. I will listen. I would be afraid to press that one button to get into the queue, stumbling over my words to ask my questions. But I realized, what the hell? Neely Fuller are just a victim, just like me. You're both fellow prisoners of war, So, he's nobody special. If anyone special exists, such does exist. So yeah, I appreciate Neely Fuller Jr. show. I highly recommend folks going to producejustice.com, not only listening to the show, but to order his books, study his text. We also have a code book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept playlist, where we cover the whole text, cover to cover. If you want to hear some bits of it being read and being discussed thoroughly, I think we did an excellent job of doing that. So tune into that as well. Check that out. Share that. We need, it's crazy that Smoky Damages and I can report similar war experiences while being on other sides of the planet. And that goes to show me, at least, that there's some sort of racist hive mind going on. Like, white people, they seem to perhaps think alike, or they behave in like a hive mind like manner. I may be incorrect, but that's what it seems like to me.
I think you're right on. And I think our racism, white supremacy is a business, like I mentioned before, with a mission, visions, and values, and they know that, and they know exactly what is to be done in order to, like Dr. Welsing says, maintain their stave off their or prevent their genetic annihilation. They understand all of that. One of the things you just mentioned in your last statement was about being nervous talking to Mr. Fuller about anything. And I think some of the things that non-white people have to get over as well is that learning how to control that emotion when talking to people about something that is classified as emotional, but actually it's a problem set that needs to be solved. But the fear associated sometimes with having those discussions results in that nervousness, which then becomes emotional, which then displaces logic. But that all comes with practice, which again is why I appreciate you, 05, and Smoking Damages. You and I, we had that pretty detailed conversation, but it seems as though you and I could probably have some really good conversations as well, and Gus as well, as again, how to command language, get past that nervousness, practice having those conversations, utilizing that constructive language, moving towards solving problems. Because I think most non-white people have been trained and conditioned to be emotional and not logical. We're not considered to be the first resource by anyone else that's not non-white. We're not considered to be the first people to go to solve problems. But if you want to entertain it, you want to get somebody that's probably going to score 8, 9, 10 points on your team, go pick up a non-white person. But if you're looking at trying to solve some problems, you ain't necessarily going to the non-white people first. Because we're not taught to be logical, we're taught to be emotional. But when we can get past that emotion and step into logic and utilize that first and foremost, it's a whole lot easier to break down these barriers that's in front of us. But that takes practice, that takes will, it takes courage to do so. But it can be done. And one last thing, 0526, I said this before to you in one of the posts you put on a few weeks ago. I really, really, really appreciate the work that you put in to bring these presentations forward. It seems like every day you're coming up with you're posting a new discussion or a new presentation or something, but just the amount of work that you're putting in, I really, really appreciate your level of effort in helping to produce justice. So I want to thank you publicly for your effort.
Thank you. And I certainly appreciate the appreciation. And I said what I said about the racist hive mind, just to illustrate the dire need for there to quickly develop a counter racist hive mind where we could see something happening and understand without even having to discuss it. Oh yeah, the usual suspects are up to something, or a white person can't turn any direction without seeing a non-white person begging for justice, demanding justice. So and to that driven to the point, all right, I'm tired of this. We're gonna have to give these non-white people what they want, or we're gonna have to get rid of all of them. And the collective, the hive mind, the counter to racist hive mind should be very, very understanding and accepting of whatever decision that racist man and racist woman decide to make. Now, maybe just a sane Negro a sane crazy victim who may be taking this code book concepts a little too far, but I think it makes sense. But I may be very, very insane.
No, it makes a lot of sense what you just said, and I think it's just this broadcast. I think has been an example for me and you. I can't say for other people, but for me, is an example of what you can do probably if you're attempting to be less confused about what racism, white supremacy is. Like 05 said, we had a different interview planned for today, and that fell through. And we could have just probably, if we were more confused, we're still confused, by the way, for non-white people listening about racism, white supremacy, we're still quite confused, right? But we could have just probably done some silly stuff and whatever, New Year's Eve. But we instead tried to, we're attempting to use our time and energy to talk about racism, white supremacy in the most constructive way that we're able to. And I think that hopefully is a lesson in some sort of a way for other non-white people to just think about that. Use your time and energy in a constructive way. Use it in a constructive way. I know it's New Year's Eve, but you don't have to get drunk. You don't have to just keep eating that, that leftover turkey or whatever it is from Horror Day, so-called Christmas or whatever and stuff. You can use your time and energy in a more constructive way if you really, really, really want to. And a lot of people, just my closing comment, when people say about, oh, but how do you go about ending racism? How do you go about blah, blah? Well, don't overcomplicate it. Just make everything you do constructive. That's one of the best ways to counter racism, white supremacy. Make everything you do constructive, from when you leave your house, from the clothes you wear, as we were talking about earlier, from the food you're going to eat, from what you're going to drink when you're about to drink something, anything you're about to eat, what you talk about, the kind of conversations you're going to have. If you're going to use your phone, you're going to call somebody, is that going to be a constructive conversation? It's definitely going to be one or the other. It's either going to be constructive or non-constructive. And if you just keep it that simple, then we might be a little closer to solving this problem. I can't promise that, but I think the record has shown, maybe, the more constructive you are, because the system's made us so non-constructive. If we become more constructive, then maybe we can make some headway in solving this problem.
Precisely. I must say I appreciate having a line of communication with you, Smokey Davengers, and you as well. Still learning, because I appreciate counter racism, the science of it, because you can really take it anywhere, and wherever there's people, there's opportunity to discuss the race problem. And the Yurugus, white people, racist man, racist woman, they have allowed Black people to enter various spaces because they think they've retarded and sabotaged most of us to the degree where, yeah, we can let them in these places. They're too stupid to really use these places for anything of productive value. So yeah, I say this to say that, yeah, I appreciate having a line of communication with you. You're still learning, so we could go and get some interviews, go interview some white people in the virtual space, in the virtual reality, because I just think about how can I, like what Smoke just said, how can I make what I'm doing constructive? And my goal is to talk about white supremacy, racism, call things what they are, and see how people respond to the logic, and see if I find people willing to discuss it. So if you want to do some hangout with CRWS, or if you want to experiment with CRWS in the virtual space and do some kind of racist conversations over there, please do so. Email me counteringrws@gmail.com, or you can just just email me there, or message me on our Facebook at Counter Racist Logic, or you can find the Facebook attached to that page, my so-called personal Facebook. You can add me on that, and we could meet up in the virtual space, record some white people being very, very, very racist, because that's what happens in our spaces. And I also appreciate the technology white people are allowing us to use, because when you are in places such as the VR, if you really don't say anything, you don't let yourself be known, you could probably tune in on what perhaps white people are talking about when there's no Black people in the room, or at least what they think when they think there's no Black people in the room. Because I hear some really, really deplorable things on that on in the VR. Just yeah.
Right, you know what? I might just have to get myself a computer just to join you guys on there, because
I agree.
don't usually hear.
I agree. The white people are abundant. You know how hard it is for us to get people in the Twitter spaces.
Oh wow! Yeah, just to speak honestly, it's it's hard. It's becoming increasingly harder just to listen to what white people say when Black people are not around. So that's that could be a joy in itself, just listening to them just talk freely amongst themselves, see what they say. Because I suspect it's like you're saying, they got racial Tourette syndrome. They just let it all hang out in the VR, I guess.
Because the avatars provide anonymity. And if there's, unless you're savvy enough to trace an IP address back to its location, which most people aren't, there are quite a few that are, but most people in the VR chats aren't going to go to that length. So people can come in there and say what they want to say without the fear of being discovered. So they're hiding behind that facade. They just let them go, man. And yeah, I've heard it myself. The very first time I got into a chat room, the very first time, cats came at me left and right, full bore. And I was like, holy moly, man, this is something. Which again, when you offer those five to get involved in, I was like, yeah, this is something we got to get into. Let me ask you this though. Some of those chat rooms are monitored by I guess, I don't know what they call them, I guess mediators. And if some of the language in some of the chat rooms is used that people find offensive or in violation of their the whatever that code like YouTube uses, where if you say this, I forget the exact term, that they can flag or penalize the access to the chat room, something along those lines. Have you experienced that? Are you aware of that dynamic, and has that been an issue?
Are you saying some of are you saying, have I seen people be like censored inside VR chat, or has this YouTube channel been has content censored because of the language and stuff?
Censored inside VR chat.
Oh no, I've never seen that happen. I've seen people say nigger, make extremely crude sexual jokes on to one another, whatever, for hours, and nothing happened to them. So
okay, so there's no facility to report anyone or anything.
Oh yeah, you can. You certainly can, but white people aren't reporting each other for saying nigger. It's just business as usual for them.
Okay, and obviously the people who are doing the so-called monitoring are probably suspected white supremacists themselves as well. So
yeah, and I've never seen these moderators either. Like maybe the person who created a room can kick the person out the room. That's about it. But as for like having any power to ban them or anything, no, they have to be reported enough times to get banned. But
you know what may be interesting is that a constructive conversation on racism might be more offensive than a bunch of people hurling epithets around the room.
I suspect you are completely correct. Yeah, it's exactly what I was about to say. I think, white people saying, nigger all day and stuff like that probably won't, like, I think as attested, not going to get banned or anything like that or reported. But if we were to have a constructive dialogue about racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, then I suspect someone would probably report that conversation and get you guys thrown off there probably in 30 seconds.
No, because we said if you like the white supremacists could sabotage it by disrupting our internet and whatnot, but we can have a private room, set a private room, and we could go out and find the white people who are willing to discuss the system with us through VR chat. And we could set a portal to a private world, and then we can have it there.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely.
That's a lot more constructive.
You should definitely try. Definitely still try as much as we can. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot different from just walking up to a bus stop and having conversation with everybody who's there, versus setting up your own room and inviting people. That's the difference between the two.
Yeah. Correct. All right. I also gotta appreciate the chat. Shout out to and appreciation to Hip Hop Head Still Learning, who is now on the panel. Jola Carter, Sour Kiss, Pepe, Edward Williams, Lime 22. I appreciate your appreciation. I appreciate your audience. Thanks for liking, commenting, and sharing. And when this video comes up, like when the video comes up tomorrow in the morning, not a live video, but an upload, please, give it a like and a comment and a share. We got to get more Black people access to this sort of information, because white people are trying to take white supremacy to infinity, and that's totally unacceptable. They already have books about them going into the stars and different galaxies and whatnot. I'm not trying to have a million years from now in a galaxy far, far away, non-white people still being called niggers, and it's a whole different galaxy. That would be unacceptable. So we got to solve this problem ASAP. Or all of us should die trying. And that was my closing comment. I'll see if folks want to share their closing comment. And
Nah, that's all right. I think I gave my closing comment before, so yeah, I'm all right.
Well, yeah, I agree with 05 said. I'm willing to die trying. And I'll leave it at that.
And I believe that racism, white supremacy is still the biggest problem on the planet to be solved, and that racism anywhere is injustice everywhere. And like CERT said and '05 said, I'm willing to die trying to solve this problem as well as to again, provide my family with my attempted family with the information so that they can, again, see clearly and navigate this world safely.
thank you from the fellow host. Thanks again to the audience. CRWS signing out. I hope to see you all tomorrow. Maintain and keep learning.